sometimes a scary subject for people, very difficult to master for others. We have an expert today. You want to stick around because he's going to give us strategies, tips, and some insights into making sure that your child is going to be math ready. Okay. So, thank you so much for joining us today, Dave Cole. Welcome to the Falling for Learning podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
We always ask our guest, what is that thing that made you fall in love with learning?
Um, Probably my third grade teacher. I think I can go. Think I can go back to there, and particularly when it came to math. I was always good in math, so I kind of thought as long as I was getting hundreds on the tests, I did not really need to do the homework. She and my mother did not quite agree with that thinking, so they convinced me that I needed to rethink that. But what my third grade teacher did is she started giving me more homework and harder homework, and a lot of what she gave me were math kind of puzzles, and I just fell in love with it. I didn't realize I was doing a lot more work than everybody else in the class, uh, but I was doing something that I really liked, and I still to this day do math puzzles and logic problems and things like that. It's just a way to kind of keep my brain moving all the time.
Wonderful. Okay. So, how did those skills and strategies that you learned from that original spark from your love of learning, how did it influence what you do today?
Everything I've done in my career has been kind of math related since then. So I went to school, I got a mechanical engineering degree, a math degree, a computer science degree. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do, so I was kind of covering my bases there. Um,
Right.
and everything I've done in my career on the computer side, on the engineering side, there's always been some math component that is in there. And it's why it's never really been a job for me because you're solving problems. And to me, it's really no different than the puzzles I was solving when I was back in third grade. So you just keep solving problems. They're a little bit harder than they were before, but that's what's kind of kept me going.
Wow. Okay. And so tell us about your educational journey. Um, yeah, so your colleges that you went to and all of that.
So I started down at a smaller school down in southern Missouri called Southeast Missouri State. Ended up graduating from the University of Missouri in Columbia, and again with a mechanical engineering degree. I figured somewhere around my senior year that was maybe not what I wanted to do. Um, but here I am. I'm 9 semesters in, 8 semesters in. It's like okay. So I graduated with mechanical engineering. Got a job as a mechanical engineer. Immediately went back and started going to school and I picked up my math and computer science degrees and kind of made that career shift about 5 years in.
So that was that graduate school, or that was just another, or was it another bachelor's, or?
Another bachelor's, yes. So I have many bachelors piled up on top of each other and
Okay.
never did go the master's route. But so I'm kind of not as deep, but I'm broad. So
Okay. That is so interesting. I know a lot of people, they go right for the graduate school. And what made you do the bachelor's again instead of doing like a master's or something like that?
um, I think I was 22 years old and I didn't think it all the way through. I probably should have gone that route. It would not have been probably much more work. What I did instead was kind of pursue two bachelors at the same time. That kind of worked into my work schedule.
Okay.
So it ended up working out fine as a result.
It's a different path, and something
Definitely.
that might be, work for other people as well
Mm-hmm.
too. So that's I like that new perspective, a different perspective of how you did that. Um, so um, now tell us about those, what you do now that you're coming to really share with parents and educators out there, as it relates to math.
Yeah. So I was working. I was working at Facebook at the time. Now called Meta. I during the summer I also ran this summer math camp for elementary school kids. And as part of that math camp, I mean, it's cruel. It's summertime, and I'm making you go to math camp for a week. Actually, none of them wanted to be there. Their parents wanted them to be
Oh,
there.
okay.
So, in fact, I asked the very first day, I said, how many of you want to be here? How many of you are here because your parents signed up? Only one kid admitted to being actually wanting to be there. I,
Okay.
so I said, okay, so here's my job for this week is I have to change your mind. So
Yes.
we played games, we did puzzles, we had competitions. Kids love competitions. And
Okay, can you stop for 1 second? Like,
yeah,
what kind of game? And I know that there are lots of parents and teachers that are suspicious of fun. So, can you tell me what that kind of math game was? Because, like, give us some specifics because sometimes we are teaching kids things, or but they're having fun.
yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you one of them. We did it was in essence a supply and demand game. To them, it was a
Okay.
tag game. So some of the students were assigned to be food, some of them were assigned to be animals, some of them were, uh, assigned to be predators. So the animals had to go after the food, the predators went after the animals. We had some
Mm-hmm.
people that went after animals or food, and you had to collect get enough food. And if you didn't get enough food, then you died. So after one round, there were less kids, and we played this. We probably played it 4 times.
So wait, you
Never.
said this was like tag.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like we're up moving around and doing this.
Yeah, we actually did it out on a field. So they got to run around, and they actually had little flags like flag football. So
Oh,
to catch them, you would grab a flag, and
I
if you were an
see.
animal, you had to get 4 food flags. Otherwise, you would die, and you had a certain amount of time.
You had to have enough food.
Right.
Okay.
And we switched some roles around. Then we went back inside. And I said, so what happened when you die? Oh, well, there wasn't enough food. So that got us into supply and demand. And we could talk about supply and demand. If there's not enough supply and we have more demand than supply, there's problems with that. Or what happens if there's too much supply and not enough demand? And it allowed us to kind of talk about some mathy subjects, but they got it because of playing this game.
Love it.
Yeah,
So did you make this game up or someone showed you or what?
we made that game up. So I was doing the math camp at the time with my son who was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and I will give him credit for this one. I believe he actually came up with that game, and I helped him hone it a little bit. But yeah, so it was great. So it was a great way to talk about math concepts. We built bridges, like a lot of times you'll do in STEM. We built bridges out of different things, and we talked about why are triangles stronger than just a straight beam and things like that.
Yes.
But they were able to see it because we were putting weights on these, and some were crashing and some were
Yeah.
not. So it was seeing them, it was visualizing. Um, we did a lot of things with Mobius strips and strips of paper, and I would take a loop of paper, right?
Let me
Just
stop you for one
oh
second. You
sure,
said Mobus strips?
Mobius strips.
Mobius. Okay, tell us more about that.
So we started with just a strip of paper, and I said we're going to do some math with the strip of paper, and
Mm-hmm.
you fold it around so it makes a ring. Okay, so I've got this ring, and what happens if we cut this ring in half, long ways? Well, you get 2 rings out of it. Say, okay, so a Mobius strip, I take that same strip of paper, but before I connect it together, I put one little twist in it. So
Mm-hmm.
now it becomes a Mobius strip, which mathematically changes everything. So now you cut that in half the same way we did, but you don't get 2 rings. It just makes one bigger ring. And if I cut it in half again, it made an even bigger ring. So we just talked about why was that? So we can get into some pretty high level stuff
Mm-hmm.
with elementary school. I've taught that same lesson at the high school level, and just the same little aha moment on their face when they're going, whoa. And then someone will always ask, what happens if I make 2 twists in there? I said, let's do that. So then they were making 2 twists, and you cut that in half, and something different happens. It actually makes 2 rings, but they're connected together this time. and 3 twists, it does something different. Every time it does something a little different. So now I had these kids begging me for paper and glue sticks and scissors so they could do that. Now, there's a lot of complex math behind why it all works, but that wasn't really the purpose. The purpose was to show math is more interesting than they think. It's not worksheets, it's not calculations,
Yeah.
it is all around us.
The Rewrite Method and the Rewrite Method Workbook are your go-to resource for helping kids to learn to fall in love with writing. It has the tips, tools, resources, strategies, and skill building activities to help kids fall out of writing hate and into loving to write. Get your book set today. Taking advantage of when kids ask questions, and
Yeah.
you can just use that as a great learning opportunity. So, for example, I was talking to a kid recently about how one of the kiddos in my child's care is on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And they were asking me, "Oh, where is she?" And I'm like, "Oh, she's in Washington, D.C." And they're like, "Where's that?" you know? So we have a whole conversation about the 50 states, and
Yeah.
that's the nation's capital, and what state we live in. And it's on the West Coast, and DC is on the East Coast. And, you know, um, like I said, there's 50 states, and
Yeah.
we live in the city, the city that we live in, and we live in the state that we live in, the cities in the state. And just, it could become a whole,
Yeah.
teaching moment. So again, if you're paying attention to the questions that your kids are asking, the things that they're interested in, you could teach them all kinds of things, and you'd be surprised that kids can really, as young as 3, 4, there's so many concepts that they can really grasp and
Yes.
understand as long as you're explaining it to them on their level. You're not using collegiate
Yeah.
wording and verbiage. If you're explaining it to them on, using words that they're familiar with, they could totally grasp it. And I whipped out the 50 states puzzle and showed
Yeah.
them, and it just engage and teach them, based on what they're interested in or curious about. Sometimes I would also, when my older kids were younger, I would ask them what they wanted to learn about,
Yeah.
and then we would kind of go from there, let them lead the way. And you'll find that if it's something that they've told you that they wanted to learn about, when it's time to go over these things, they'll also be more engaged. That kind of goes along with the whole paying attention thing. When you have um, times where you are teaching your child, use the things that you've heard them question you about, and or something that maybe you guys were somewhere out and about, and you came across, I don't know, a map, for example, and maybe you saw your child looking at the map and being curious, and
Yeah.
you guys could bring a map home and go over what's on the map, things like that.
That's yeah, that and again, thinking about the opposite side of that, sometimes we're busy, we're not in a good mood, and kids are asking us questions and we're like, I don't know, or like
Yeah.
that's enough questions or whatever. But we have to think on the other side of it, like, wait, they're interested in this and I could teach them something from this. And like you said, I've seen very young kids be really interested in planes, and then they have all kind of information about planes because it's interesting to them. They'll look
Yeah.
at books, they could identify planes, they can, and you're like, wow, like, but it's like they were interested in it, they asked questions about it, you got books about it, sometimes they'll have like advanced vocabulary, like just because
Yes.
it's what they're interested in. So, and they will dive deep. Like most of us, if we're interested in something, we'll get really into the minutia about it, granular details about something,
Yes.
because we just like it for whatever reason, right? And that's what you're saying, like for whatever reason you're interested in, when someone's an artist, they're interested in art. Like why? That's just who they are. Someone else interested in mechanics or planes, someone else interested in flowers or plants or whatever it is. And yeah, so
Yeah,
and
just kind of nurturing those interests.
That is so good that you were able to bring the fun with it,
Mm-hmm.
with the math, right? That we're up playing, something that looks like maybe resembled tag from maybe people passing by. And also kind of like a maker kind of space that you created where they're making things, they're trying things out, really fueling the inquiry for kids when it came to math. And so those are some real strategies that our parents and our educators can think about. And, a lot of creativity, like, you're saying your son, your high school son, helped create that game for you. So maybe your kids will create a game or you could create a game, but really taking math outside of the books and paper and thinking about practical application is really some awesome ways to bring math to the forefront for children.
Yeah, and we do it. We do all kinds. In fact, my kids are, they're older now. My son has a law degree now. My daughter's a doctor. But
Nice.
when we get in a car and there's a digital readout on the clock, we still do this to this day. Can you make an equation with those three numbers? So if it's like 321, that's an easy one. I can say 3 minus 2 is equal to 1, or 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. And sometimes we'll throw in factorials and all kinds of things. Sometimes there's not an equation. And then I'll say, what's the next time where there is a good equation? So
Mm.
now that's much higher level thinking. And it's just using three numbers on a clock, and you can play that anywhere. And we
So
still enjoy playing that.
that's really cool. Can you back up a little bit? I heard you say factorials. And just for our viewers and our listeners, can you explain that for them?
Sure. So factorial, if I had a number like 3 factorial, and mathematically you write that with a 3 and then an exclamation point after that. And 3 factorial means 3 times 2 times 1. 5 factorial would be 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And factorials can get very, very big very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And to an elementary school kid, factorials are not a lot of use except for fun. But when you get to high school and you start looking at combinations and how many combinations of let's say I have 5 flower pots and I want to arrange them on a shelf. How many different ways can I do that? It's 5 factorial. So they'll very quickly learn that wow, that's an easy way of solving some pretty complex problems.
Nice. Thank you so much. All right. And so tell us what you're doing now um, to really, support kids in math or educators in math.
Yeah, so from that camp, one of the things that I did, I told a lot of stories. I think I just like telling stories, and it's much easier getting a concept across if there's a story behind it because you're not so focused on the math behind it. It's kind of the story. Um, so one of the kids told me, "Oh, Mr. Cole, you should make these into books." And I said, "Yeah, that would be fun. I'll do that." And I had some free time. I was living in California, kind of commuting back and forth to St. Louis, which is my hometown. And sometimes on weekends I had some free time. So I said, okay, I'm going to start writing these. I'm going to take one of these stories, expand it out into a book. So I wrote a mystery story about elementary school kids solving mysteries using math, some
Mm.
math concept. So I was having fun doing it. So I wrote one, I wrote another one, I wrote another one. And one of my coworkers, I was talking to him about it. He said, you ought to try to get these published. And 11, 12 books later, yeah, translated into, I think, 7 languages, 9 languages, I don't
Nice.
know. Yeah, so I'm kind of an accidental author, and it was really just about telling stories.
Yeah, some of what that reminded me a little bit of MathNet that was on. I don't know if it was on PBS back in the day. I don't know, like
Yeah,
little mysteries being solved with math. So
yeah. There was a show called Numbers that was on for a little bit, and it wasn't for
yes,
kids, and it was they had the mathematician guy in there who was solving things, going, well, the math says that whatever.
yeah,
Um, so that just kind of intrigued me, and I'm sure that was kind of in the back of my mind when I wrote these books. But kids love them. I had one little girl write me this is the nicest note. She said, I really didn't like math. And during COVID, I was at home and my dad brought me the first Math Kids book. And I read it and liked it. And then he got me another one and another one. And she said, completely changed my mind about math. And she said, now math is my favorite subject and it's my best subject. So
wonderful.
she said, thanks for giving me a chance to learn about math. And I went, great, you got it. That's who I was writing this for, you.
Absolutely, that is so great. And shout out to parents, like that could be such a great writing activity too, like just writing to the author and sharing how a piece of literature really helped you and you enjoyed it. So that's I really like that idea too. So tell us where we could get your book.
So you can find out about them. I have a website, davecolebooks.com. Very clever name. And it'll tell you all about the books. I've got a younger series as well called Emily and Sam. I had some parents saying, because the Math Kids is probably third to sixth grade kind of
Okay.
range. And I had a couple parents, and this happened over the course of a couple weeks. I was getting the same message from multiple parents saying, my kids love your books, but I have some younger kids. Could you write a younger series? And I said, well, maybe. Let's see. So I wrote the first one. My publisher loved it. So there's 3 books in that series, probably some more to come on that as well. That's more for first through third kind of grade, early chapter books.
Wow.
So yeah. So sometimes you'll find them at local bookstores. They're hit and miss a little bit. You can always find them on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and all the big places. But a lot of independent bookstores as well.
Great. I know, like before the show, you were telling me at the beginning of this is the beginning of the school year, and that you have a lot of places that you visit. Can you tell us about, how someone, like what, how someone could get in contact with you, and then what you do when you go to their school?
Yeah, and also through the website. So DaveCoBooks.com. It's got a whole section on author visits. I've probably done, I don't know, 150 maybe visits now throughout Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa. Been down to Florida. Um, so that to me is fun, and they're very interactive presentations. So kids are doing some math with me, and we do some stuff with the paper strips. I do a little magic, which always keeps them interested. Sometimes some fire appears, out of my hands, and you never know what's going to happen. So it's a lot of fun, but I need to be very interactive so that the kids are experiencing that. And I do something a little bit different with younger kids than I do with the older kids. But yeah, you can contact me right through there, and yeah, that's fun. I love doing the school visits. I had one teacher tell me when I was on a visit, said, we have been reading your book and we do it as a read aloud in class. And
Mhm.
in the book, I do have some puzzles because I think puzzles are a great way of teaching math without them knowing they're learning math, right? I don't even have to tell them it's math. They'll figure it out. And she said, whenever we get to a puzzle, then we all break into groups and we try to solve the puzzle in like groups of 4. And I said, that's
Nice.
a perfect way of using the books.
Wonderful. Tell us, because I know, I've talked a lot about this on the show, just how, you know, there's like a lot of kids and people are like, don't consider themselves to be math people or they don't like math. What might you, what have you seen people doing that contributes to that maybe we could, tell parents or educators like to be careful not to do that, or kind of reframe how they're doing certain things so that we don't continue this, where people could slow it down, at least the people
Right.
that don't like math.
In fact, I actually heard it on your podcast. I think you made a comment one time. We would never say, "Oh yeah, I just can't read,"
Yeah.
but we're okay saying we can't do math.
Yes.
Um, so what I try to tell parents and what I try to tell kids, in fact, I'll tell you the very first thing I do at any school visit is I always ask, "How many of you like math?" And in first grade, every hand will go up. Second grade, every hand will go up. There's a few in third grade, but fourth and fifth grade, and I don't know if it's the advent of decimals and fractions or what, but probably by the time I get to fifth grade, if I get 25% saying they like math, that's high. So that troubles me. That worries me a little bit. So then I do ask the follow up. I said, if you want to share with me, tell me why. Tell me why you don't like math. And I get two answers, variations of those. I'll get something like, it makes my head explode, which means, okay, it's hard. Okay, I get it. Yeah, that's a variation of that. Or it's boring. And sometimes I'll get that same thing, that same answer, two answers from the same kid. And math can be boring. So what I try to do is to show that there's math beyond what you're doing that is going to be more interesting. We'll talk about, there's a famous sequence called the Fibonacci sequence. And it's not hard math. It is, you start with two ones. I love math patterns. Start with two ones, then I add the two ones together, I get a two. Then I add one and two together to get three. So it's just keep adding the last two numbers. And they pick up on the sequence really quick. I let them kind of discover the sequence, and then they're kind of shouting out numbers, and they get lost somewhere around 89 because the math gets a little harder to do in their head, but they get that. And I said, so why is this amazing? Have you ever seen the sequence before? And they always say, oh no. And I said, but you really have. And I said, if you go out and you look at flowers, every flower that's out there will have, the number of petals will be a number in the Fibonacci sequence. So there are flowers with 144 petals, but there aren't any flowers with 100 petals or 82 petals, but they are some flowers that have 89 petals. And I have pictures of those, so I'll kind of show those. And then we talk about, I draw a picture of the Fibonacci sequence. So you can actually draw little squares that kind of keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you connect them all together, it makes this really cool spiral. And they all recognize the spiral. And I said, so where have you seen a shape like that? Think about animals. And they'll, seashells and things like that. And we'll talk about an elephant's trunk looks like that, a pig's tail. So the shape is all around us. I said, so what if I'm collecting those shells on a beach and a big storm comes up? Hurricane, hurricane. And I'll show them this Fibonacci spiral next to a hurricane. They have the exact same shape. And spiral galaxies and things like that. And so it's amazing. I want them to see that math is all around us. And you're going to keep seeing math even if you don't like it. And, it's out there. And the math is going to get more fun, and that's what I really, if I can take anything away, I always ask at the end, is math more interesting than you think? And most of them will, some begrudgingly, but will say, yeah, it's more interesting than we think. And if I can do that, then I think I've accomplished kind of a little mission that they may give math another shot.
Yeah, it's good really to think about it. And it is so limitless. And I've had several people come on and they have a different take on how to do this. So you have like totally new ideas. But yeah, so I think maybe it's on us as parents and educators to really make sure that we are highlighting and bringing to the forefront the ways in which math are all around us, how we could use it, the applications for it, how to make it fun, how to integrate it in ways that are more engaging. And I think also embracing just that, like it can be boring sometimes, but there's all these other layers that make it more interesting. But when you're interested in it, then the boring is less boring, right? Like it's not
Right,
as boring. Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And you're willing to go out and learn some on your own, because ultimately, I think what we want kids to do is we want them to learn on their own, because
Yes.
at some point we're out of school
Yeah.
and we don't stop learning. We want to keep learning. We get to choose more what we learn, but we always want people to learn. So I want to help give the skills to be able to go out and do the learning. So what I did in the books is there's an appendix in each book, each of the Math Kids books, that talks about the math. You don't have to get into the math, but if
Mm-hmm.
kids are interested, there's more details on, what does this really mean mathematically. And
Yeah.
so I think that part's fun as well. There are also teacher study guides for all of the books as well, or at least most of the books. Those usually trail the books by a little bit, but
Nice. That is so good. We so definitely in the show notes we'll have all this information, and for parents and educators to really be able to, share these resources with their kids and really get into the books and the fun of math. Okay, and so you're so experienced, right? And with the math and everything. But if I'm a parent, could you give me some advice when my fifth grader hates math? Like, what should I be doing at home, or what are some things I could be doing, that are really practical for me? If I'm a parent who is not an educator.
yeah, for me, and I've done this with a lot of kids, and gotten them interested, is in mathematical puzzles and solving. When I talk to parents and I talk to teachers, they're saying, "Well, I know math is hard." I said, "But math is how we kind of process things in our brain. So math is also science, and math is also even, how my son, who's an attorney, he said, I am shocked how much I use math skills in my job as a lawyer. Just the
Mm,
logical thinking process. I need to prove this. How do I get this, and this to do that? So those skills are really, really important. So yep,
yeah.
maybe they will not do calculus when they get older. Not everybody does, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they are going to need these other skills, and a lot of those are just kind of thinking skills, logic problems. Kids like to learn how to do Sudoku puzzles
Yeah.
and things like that. So, and there's all kinds of resources that are out there. You can Google, math games for pick a grade, and there'll be lots of things, or math puzzles for that age. I
Okay.
coach 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's 4 now. Math teams, and we play a game called Equations, which is just a really heavy duty thinking game, and the
Okay.
kids never will know how amazing math they are doing. And I'll just tell you equations real quick because it's an interesting game. We're taught to solve a problem. We are given 3 plus 4 to get 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Equations does everything backwards. You start with the solution, and maybe the solution is 24. Well, there
Okay.
are lots of ways to get to 24. There's 2 times 12, and there's 2 times 10 plus 5 minus 1. And it makes kids look at numbers differently,
Okay.
and it's a great strategy game. And I have fifth graders that are doing, fractional roots and powers and things, and they don't know how hard the math is that they're doing. They've just found strategies for doing that. Two other games I really really like. One game is called 24,
Okay.
and it's a card game, and it just has 4 numbers on it, and you have to find a way to make those 4 numbers using just addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, to get to 24 using all 4 numbers.
Okay.
Um, great, great, great game. Another one I like is a game called SET,
Okay.
and it's just patterns, and you have to find 3 things that are alike or different, and and you can play that with very young kids, and you will not be able to play with them long. They will get very good at it very quickly. But it's a really good, just a logical thinking game. And I love that game. But you can make up your own. Flashcards, I think, no one likes flashcards. But in math camp, I invented the game of Dave. It's my game. I could call it after me.
Yeah.
So it's basically like playing the game of war. You divide the cards up, you flip over a card. And face cards are worth 10 points, everything else a 9 is 9, and 8, and so on. If they're the same color, they have to add them, and it's the first one to come up with the sum. If one's red and one's black, you subtract them. If they're both red, you multiply them. So there's 3 different operations that you can do.
Right.
What are you really doing? You're doing flashcards. They loved playing that game because it became a competition, and that's all they were really doing was flashcards and working on their math facts. So it was fun. I really, they would beg me to play that. We'd come in the morning and go, "Can we play Dave? Can we play Dave?" Sure, yeah, let's go for it. And that's something that you can do at home with your kids, right? If they're struggling with some stuff, you make it a game, and they don't have to know they're learning.
Absolutely. We are so glad that you came on our show. Another math expert on our show with a total different twist on how to make a math application fun, interesting, and even running around and doing it. I love it. So we are going to make sure that all of that is in the show notes, and please reach out to Dave. Is there anything you want to tell parents or educators maybe struggling out there with learning, or just may or may not, whatever final things?
Yeah, it's again, you find a way to get your kids to want to learn. So if they love baseball and hate math, have them do statistics for baseball players. They don't know they're doing math; they're doing statistics for baseball players.
Yeah.
How many games behind are we? What's the magic number? All of those little baseball-y terms have math behind all of them. They could get into that. So find something that they like, and find a way to incorporate some math in there. And feel free to reach out. I can come up with ideas for you. So reach out to me through the website, and I just say, hey, give me your situation. I'll come up with something.
Love it. All right. Thank you so much again, audience, for listening in or viewing the Falling for Learning podcast. Please do something today that's going to give your children the competitive advantage. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thanks again for supporting the Falling for Learning podcast. New episodes go live every Saturday at 5 p.m. You can watch us on youtube.com at Falling for Learning, or listen on all major podcast platforms such as Apple, Google, Audible, Spotify, and much more. For more resources, visit fallinginlovewithlearning.com. We really appreciate you. Have a wonderful week.